Tensions high. U.S. sends new military weapons to Philippines to strike China. Manila. The United States has fully restored its $500 million US dollars, 670 million Singapore dollars, military aid to the Philippines in a move seen as the Trump administration's effort to dispel doubts on Washington's reliability as a security ally in the Indo-Pacific amid tensions with China. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and his Filipino counterpart, Mr. Gilberto Teodoro Jr., announced the fund's restoration in a joint press conference in Manila on March 28th, marking Mr. Hegseth's first stop in his maiden trip to the region. His visit comes amid growing concerns over Washington's dependability as a defense partner, following U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff war on his allies, his stance on Ukraine, as well as his 90-day freeze on foreign aid programs. It also comes amid rising tensions in the South China Sea, where Manila and Beijing have competing claims. The U.S. in February initially exempted only $336 million US dollars of its military aid for Manila from the freeze. We are grateful for the enduring support of the United States, including the State Department's issuance of a waiver in part, in no small way, through the efforts of Secretary Hegseth and the rest of the team, for a waiver of foreign military financing for the Philippines, Mr. Teodoro said. He said the fund's reinstatement will be crucial in re-establishing effective deterrence against unwanted and malign influences that threaten stability, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but across the world. Mr. Hegseth, both during the joint presser and in his separate meeting with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. before that, reassured the Philippines of the U.S. ironclad commitment to the Mutual Defense Treaty, a 1951 deal where both nations agreed to defend each other in case of an armed attack. Deterrence is necessary around the world, but specifically in this region, in your country, considering the threats from the Communist Chinese, and that friends need to stand shoulder to deter conflict, to ensure that there's free navigation, Mr. Hegseth said in his meeting with Mr. Marcos. Whether you call it the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea, we recognize that your country has stood very firm in that location and in defense of your nation, Mr. Hegseth added, using the term Manila uses for the eastern parts of the disputed sea that lie within the country's exclusive economic zone, but which China is claiming as its own. Asked for comment by reporters, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiaquan hit back at Washington, saying it should stop being a troublemaker in the South China Sea. We also offer a piece of advice to the Philippines. Do not rely on the U.S. to stir up trouble in the sea, and do not try to provoke military confrontation, he said in a statement. The two defense chiefs announced key agreements during their press conference, including the U.S. deployment of the Missiles anti-ship missile system and unmanned surface vehicles during the annual U.S.-Philippines War Games to be held in the Southeast Asian country in April and May. Bilateral Special Forces training will also kick off in Batanes, the northernmost Philippine island closest to Taiwan, the self-ruled democratic island that Beijing considers part of China. Washington and Manila also announced a new bilateral cyber campaign to bolster cybersecurity cooperation, as well as plans for increased logistics and defense industrial cooperation. The Philippines is prepared and is, in fact, taking a more active role in rallying our allies to resist any attempt to change international law by acquiescence or fait accompli in the South China Sea, Mr. Teodoro said. The Straits Times reached out to the Chinese embassy in Manila for comment, but it has yet to respond, despite Mr. Hegseth's assurances to the Philippines. Analysts remain cautious on the U.S. reliability as a security ally under Mr. Trump. Dr. Robin Garcia, head of Manila-based public affairs firm WR Numero, described Mr. Hegseth's visit as a credibility-building exercise for Washington. Trump has not been a reliable partner to many of America's strategic allies in recent years. There is reason to remain defensive and not celebrate too early, he said, noting that with ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, it is not in Washington's interest to engage in a confrontation with China. Dr. Garcia said the Marcos administration should therefore continue strengthening defense ties beyond the U.S., deepening alliances with Japan, Australia, and Canada to ensure a more diversified security strategy. Manila must take a proactive approach in securing its interests by forging stronger partnerships beyond Washington, said geopolitical analyst Don McLean Gill of De La Salle University in Manila during the February 20th episode of the Straits Times Asian Insider. We have to continue negotiating to ensure that Philippine interest is placed favorably in Trump's transactional worldview, Mr. Gill said. Manila must take a proactive approach in securing its interests by forging stronger partnerships beyond Washington, said geopolitical analyst Don McLean Gill of De La Salle University in Manila during the February 20th episode of the Straits Times Asian Insider. We have to continue negotiating to ensure that Philippine interest is placed favorably in Trump's transactional worldview, Mr. Gill said.